Imagine for a moment feeling this really deep pull, almost like an echo from your ancestors, towards a place maybe you've never even seen.
Mm.
And what if you could take that feeling, that connection, and make it, well, real, like tangible, turn it into a second passport?
Yeah.
Not just for easier travel, but to actually reclaim a part of your heritage, maybe one that felt lost and, unlock totally new possibilities. That's a really powerful idea. And it's exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay.
We're looking at dual citizenship, specifically for African Americans, and how those ancestral roots can potentially open the door to getting a second passport, especially in certain African nations.
So for anyone listening who's maybe thought about this or is just curious, our goal here is to give you let's say, a clear rundown of what's happening. It feels like a growing movement.
It really does seem to be gaining traction.
We want to unpack why it's becoming such a big deal, look at the actual benefits, and sort of walk you through what can be a pretty complex journey. We're drawing on the research and articles you pulled together for us.
Right. Think of this as maybe your shortcut to understanding this whole path, one that seems to be really resonating with people right now, touching on identity, history, opportunity.
And what's really striking, I think, is that growing interest you mentioned among African Americans, specifically looking into dual citizenship. It feels like more than just, a practical thing.
Definitely more than a trend.
Yeah, it seems deeply rooted in acknowledging those historical ties, wanting to reconnect with lineage. It's almost like, well, some see it as kind of personal, grassroots form of reparative justice.
Reparative justice. When you use that term here, are you talking about, like, addressing the historical break, the loss of identity and connection caused by slavery?
Precisely that. It's
Yeah.
individuals trying to reclaim a sense of belonging, a legal identity that was systematically erased or denied.
Okay.
So when these nations create pathways, they're sort of acknowledging that historical wound and offering a concrete way for descendants to reclaim a place, not just in spirit, but legally and sometimes economically too.
And it feels like it's not just individuals seeking this out, but there's a response happening too. African governments getting involved.
Absolutely. It's becoming more of a two-way street. We're seeing various African governments actively putting policies in place to make this process easier. It's about building real reciprocal connections with the diaspora.
So less symbolic, more practical bridge building.
Exactly. And the implications are pretty significant. Getting that second passport through Ancestry isn't just about feeling connected. It means potentially much wider travel freedom, maybe access to social services, even economic opportunities opening up within these African countries.
So real, tangible benefits on top of the personal meaning.
Definitely. It opens doors on quite a few levels.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts a bit. The legal foundation for a lot of this often comes down to something called jus sanguinis, right of blood.
That's the one. Jus sanguinis, literally right of blood.
For listeners who know these terms, what's the key thing to understand about it in this specific context? Because it sounds straightforward, but I suspect it's not.
Well, at its heart, it means citizenship passed down by blood through parents, grandparents, sometimes further back. But the critical point, especially for African Americans, is often how far back a country's law allows that claim to go.
Ah, okay.
And crucially, does the lineage need to be perfectly documented, unbroken? Because that's where the huge historical challenge comes in. Slavery didn't just break families. It deliberately destroyed the records that just sanguinis usually relies on.
Right, so the very documents you'd normally need: birth certificates, marriage licenses, official family records.
Exactly. It's the standard proofs.
They often just don't exist for the ancestors of many African Americans because of slavery. That's the core problem.
That's the documentation challenge in a nutshell. It's not just about a few missing papers. It's systemic erasure.
Wow.
Think about it. Formal records for enslaved people were rare, inconsistent, or sometimes listed people as property, not as part of a family unit with legal recognition.
So the paper trail just goes cold.
It often hits a brick wall. And that historical reality creates this unique, massive hurdle when trying to meet the standard proof requirements of most citizenship laws around the world. You can imagine how frustrating that must be for people trying to trace their roots.
Yeah, deeply frustrating, like knowing the connection is there, but hitting a wall when trying to prove it legally.
Exactly. A sense of fragmented heritage.
But despite these huge obstacles, it's actually really encouraging to see some African nations stepping up, creating clearer paths, maybe recognizing these specific historical difficulties.
Yes, several countries are really leading the way. And these aren't just administrative changes. They seem aimed at actively building community and encouraging the diaspora to invest in various ways, in the continent's future.
Can you give some examples? Which countries are making this more accessible?
Sure, Benin is a strong example. They've worked to streamline their process. While they still prefer traditional documents like birth certificates if available, they're reportedly becoming more open to other forms of evidence.
Like what kind of evidence?
Things like DNA test results that can link applicants to existing family lines in Benin, or even notarized statements from community elders who can vouch for a family's historical ties.
That's a really interesting adaptation to the reality of the records. What about Ghana? They've been quite prominent in this space too, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. Ghana's efforts are probably the most well-known. They have the right of abode, which grants permanent residency.
Okay, so residency first.
Right. And they also offer a path to full citizenship for those who can trace their ancestry. What's interesting about Ghana's approach is the emphasis they place on commitment. They often look for applicants to show how they plan to contribute positively to the nation. It fosters a real two-way relationship.
So it's not just about ancestry, but also about future engagement.
Exactly. And you also see Sierra Leone, which allows people with Sierra Leonean heritage to apply, again, needing proof of that lineage. Nigeria also has pathways based on ancestry.
But I understand Nigeria's process might be a bit more complex.
It can be, yes. The requirements there sometimes involve navigating more bureaucratic steps, so careful research and maybe legal help are often advised for Nigeria.
Okay, so different countries, different approaches, but a definite trend towards opening doors.
Definitely. And what's really significant, I think, is how some countries are adapting their rules. It's not just about creating a pathway, but making it genuinely more accessible for people who face that historical documentation gap we talked about.
Right, relaxing the really strict traditional requirements because they understand the history.
Exactly. There's a progressive shift happening.
So how are they doing that specifically? What are the main changes making this easier?
Well, one of the biggest shifts is the increasing acceptance of DNA testing.
Ah, okay. Using science to bridge the gap.
Pretty much. It offers a scientific way to demonstrate ancestral links when the paper trail is missing. It doesn't solve everything, but it makes the process potentially accessible to many more people. It's kind of shifting the proof from just paper to include biology.
That seems like a major evolution for legal systems dealing with identity. And you mentioned oral histories, too. How does that work?
Yes, that's another fascinating development. Some governments are starting to give more weight to family narratives, community testimonies.
So stories passed down through generations.
Exactly. Valuing that living history. Ghana, for example, apparently has ways to formally incorporate oral evidence into applications. And Benin is said to encourage people to share detailed family stories, especially if they can be supported by elders or community knowledge to help solidify their claims.
That feels incredibly important, recognizing that history lives in people and communities, not just on paper.
It really does. These trends, DNA, oral histories, they signal a broader move towards inclusivity, towards actively wanting to reconnect with the descendants in the diaspora.
Okay, this is really helpful context. So if someone listening is feeling that connection, maybe thinking, okay, I want to explore this, what are the first practical steps they should take? Where do you even begin?
First things first, research. Deep, thorough research. You absolutely need to dig into the specific requirements of the countries you might be interested in. What documents do they actually ask for? What are the eligibility rules? How does the application process work?
And not just African nations, potentially.
That's a good point. While our focus is Africa, it's worth noting some European countries also have citizenship by ancestry laws that might apply, depending on someone's full heritage. So cast a reasonably wide net initially.
Okay, so research first. Then, assuming you find a potential pathway, it's about document gathering.
Yes, and this is where meticulousness is key. Gather everything you can find: birth certificates, marriage licenses, census records, anything relevant.
Even if it feels incomplete.
Even if it's incomplete, get what you can. Make sure documents are authentic originals or certified copies. Get them translated officially if they're not in the required language. File everything carefully. And be aware, some countries might ask for extra things, like proving residency for a time, or even language knowledge.
It sounds like a serious undertaking. Lots of potential pitfalls. Is this something people should try to navigate alone?
Honestly, for most people, getting expert help is probably essential. This stuff is complex.
Like who? Lawyers? Genealogists?
Both, potentially.
Mm.
Citizenship attorneys who specialize in the laws of the specific country you're targeting can be invaluable. They know the nuances, the potential roadblocks,
Okay.
and professional genealogical researchers. They are crucial for digging deep into family history, finding those elusive records, birth, marriage, immigration, land records that can be incredibly hard to unearth on your own, especially given the historical challenges.
Right. They know where to look and how to interpret what they find.
Exactly. And one more thing on practical steps.
Yeah.
Stay informed. These laws aren't static.
Ah, good point. Things can change.
Definitely. Citizenship rules can shift because of politics, economic situations, legal reforms. So keep an eye on official government websites, maybe connect with expat groups online. Staying current is really important throughout the process.
Okay, that makes sense. Research, documents, expert help, and staying updated. Now, stepping back a bit, there's the whole question of dual citizenship itself. Do all these countries actually allow you to keep your U.S. citizenship?
That is a critical point. And the answer is no. The policies vary widely.
Okay.
Some nations absolutely welcome dual citizenship. Ghana and Nigeria, for instance, generally allow you to hold their citizenship alongside your U.S. one. It reflects, an understanding of global ties, wanting to strengthen connections without forcing people to choose.
So they embrace that dual identity.
Yes. But, this is a big but,
But
other countries might require you to renounce your original citizenship, your U.S. citizenship in this case, as part of the process of becoming their citizen.
seriously, give up U.S. citizenship.
In some cases, yes. Ethiopia and Morocco are sometimes cited as examples where renunciation might be required. The laws can be complex and change.
Wow, that's a huge decision with massive implications.
It absolutely is, which underlines again why that thorough research and specific legal advice is just non-negotiable. You have to understand the implications for your existing citizenship before you go down this road. Consulting official government sources is paramount.
No kidding. That changes the calculations significantly for some people, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's a major life decision, not just a paperwork exercise.
Okay, so let's sort of bring this together. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. To recap, pursuing dual citizenship through Ancestry, particularly for African Americans looking towards Africa, is this really unique intersection of heritage, identity, and opportunity.
A chance to connect, access new resources.
Exactly. But it demands serious effort, diligent research, careful documentation, and usually getting that expert legal and genealogical help.
And patience. Sounds like patience is a big requirement, too.
Definitely. These processes can take time, but beyond the practicalities, the legal hurdles. We shouldn't lose sight of the emotional core here.
That sense of connection.
Yeah. Reconnecting with roots, even across generations, across oceans, it can foster this incredibly profound sense of belonging, of identity, finally clicking into place for some people.
It's more than just a legal status.
Much more. And exploring this doesn't just open doors for an individual, travel, residency, business maybe. It feels like it also enriches the larger story, the collective narrative of the African American experience. It's a narrative of reclamation, of resilience, of building new futures by engaging with the past.
So the final thought for everyone listening, what should they take away from this deep dive?
Maybe consider this. How could exploring your own ancestry, potentially even towards dual citizenship, do more than just change your travel plans?
How could it maybe inspire hope or encourage a deeper connection with your own history that might actually shape your future in positive ways?
Exactly. What untapped resources, personal, cultural, maybe even economic, or what deeper understandings might you find waiting in your own heritage? It's a powerful question to ponder.